Papua New Guinea has long struggled with the consequences of corruption, poor governance, and insufficient law enforcement. Since the independence of the country, there has been a constant battle between ensuring economic growth, addressing the demands of the people, and maintaining law and order. However, under the leadership of Prime Minister James Marape, while there have been promises of change, the nation continues to face an alarming increase in corruption, escalating law and order problems, and misguided priorities that hinder progress. Corruption has been a systemic issue in Papua New Guinea for decades. It has affected almost every sector of the economy, from government ministries to private businesses. The Marape government initially promised to tackle corruption and bring about transparency and accountability, yet the reality on the ground has shown otherwise. In fact, reports of misuse of funds, bribery, and government mismanagement remain rampant in various government departments, including law enforcement, health, and education. One of the key factors contributing to the ongoing corruption is a lack of proper checks and balances. The judicial system and law enforcement agencies, which should ideally act as the backbone in fighting corruption, remain under-resourced and overburdened. Many corruption cases are swept under the rug, and those involved often face no consequences. Political elites, business moguls, and other powerful figures continue to benefit from the country's vast resources, while the average citizen struggles to make ends meet. Moreover, the opacity of government deals, such as the ones surrounding major infrastructure projects, natural resource management, and international partnerships, raises serious questions about the integrity of the government's actions. This pattern of corruption, coupled with the lack of accountability, is deeply ingrained in the culture of governance in Papua New Guinea, and is one of the primary reasons the country remains trapped in a cycle of poverty and instability. Along with corruption, law and order issues have reached unprecedented levels in Papua New Guinea. The government's inability to address these challenges effectively has exacerbated the security situation across the country. From tribal fights, gang violence, and armed robberies to domestic violence and human trafficking, the people of PNG are living in constant fear. The police force tasked with maintaining law and order is ill-equipped and underfunded, making it nearly impossible for them to respond effectively to these growing threats. One of the main reasons for the increase in lawlessness is the breakdown of social structures and an overburdened justice system. In rural areas, especially in the highlands, tribal conflicts have escalated, with no clear end in sight. Despite this, the government has been slow to respond to the root causes of these issues, such as land disputes, lack of education, unemployment, and poor infrastructure, while the police and military are often left to deal with the fallout. Police officers, despite their best efforts, are often undermined by inadequate resources and poor pay. Law enforcement in Papua New Guinea is increasingly seen as a dangerous profession, with officers frequently becoming victims of violence. This lack of support for the police, combined with the culture of impunity that pervades certain sectors of society, has made it difficult for law and order to be maintained, particularly in high-risk areas like Port Moresby, Lae, and parts of the highlands. The Marape government has talked about addressing law and order, but the results have been underwhelming. Despite announcements of special task forces, increased police visibility, and promises of security sector reforms, crime continues to rise, and communities remain unsafe. In the face of these overwhelming challenges, the government of Papua New Guinea has decided to enter into a partnership with the National Rugby League, aiming to have the country join the NRL as the 18th team. While the idea may be exciting for rugby fans, it is essential to critically examine how this deal will benefit the nation as a whole, especially considering the more pressing issues that the country faces. The notion that joining the NRL will bring economic benefits or solve PNG's problems is a fallacy. While rugby holds a significant place in PNG's culture, the reality is that the benefits of joining a global sports league are far from guaranteed. The money spent on this deal could have been better invested in addressing fundamental issues such as healthcare, education, infrastructure, and security, which affect the everyday lives of Papua New Guineans. The NRL deal is an example of misguided priorities. While the government focuses on securing a spot in a professional rugby league, people in rural areas still lack access to basic services. Lawlessness continues to plague the streets, and the educational system remains in disarray. The country is in need of urgent reforms in critical sectors like governance, law enforcement, and public welfare, but instead, the government's focus seems to be on symbolic, short-term projects like the NRL deal. In addition, the deal with the NRL comes at a time when corruption scandals continue to undermine public trust in the government. How can the government justify spending money on a rugby league deal while the nation faces a growing crisis in law and order, inadequate healthcare, and widespread poverty? The people of Papua New Guinea are desperate for real change, not distractions. While Prime Minister James Marape and his government have made promises of progress, the reality is that corruption is still rampant. Law and order issues are spiraling out of control, and essential services continue to be neglected. The decision to prioritize the NRL deal, instead of addressing the urgent issues facing the country, reflects a lack of understanding of what the people truly need. Papua New Guinea deserves a government that is committed to transparency, accountability, and the well-being of its citizens. The focus should be on solving critical issues like corruption, law and order, healthcare, education, and economic development. Until these fundamental problems are addressed, any efforts to promote external high-profile ventures, such as joining the NRL, will remain nothing more than a smokescreen to mask the government's inability to govern effectively. The Marape government must focus on the priorities that truly matter to the people of Papua New Guinea, or it risks continuing the cycle of mismanagement that has held the country back for so long.